Star Citizen in its current state has plenty of issues. I know this because my YouTube comments tell me every day. One of the most glaring things, though, is the lack of game-provided things to do. Diverse missions, locations, or activities. It's been pretty restricted to mining, hauling, combat, and sandbox gameplay. For years now, we've been seeing the approach of new small points of interest to house these future things to do. And with the Alpha 3.17 branch of updates we're currently seeing, we've started to see their arrival. But this next update is taking things one step further and introducing one of the more important feature updates over the last few years. It might not seem like it yet, but this is the best feature coming to Star Citizen in 3.17.2. Thank you for coming to my Tomato Talk. New locations are a big part of this next update in Star Citizen. We've been making use of cities and space stations for a while now, and even derelicts recently got a facelift, but we're being introduced to a new point of interest this month: derelict settlements. These derelicts are a new type of location we haven't seen before. They consist of derelict ships like we've seen in-game already, but are infused with a healthy dose of history. They are longer-term derelicts that have been sitting around for a while and have attracted some of the more seedy NPCs in the system. They are also made to house tailor-made missions, which are likely tests for future mission generation. These missions will be related to delivery, mercenary, and bounty hunting work. They are a big part of what makes these locations so special. In the past, we've waited quite a bit for new locations to be added to the game. While we've seen mild reworks like Grim Hex, new useless or single-use locations like cargo decks and refineries respectively, and junkyards which act as new waypoints and existing missions, we haven't been getting much new content with these locations. There are a few, like the 890 jump that gets taken over by pirates, and some dynamic event locations, but we've been waiting. Not only do these new derelict settlements show some of the new obvious focus from the studio on these locations, they also show a new focus on packaging said locations with something to do. Much like the derelicts from earlier this year, which helped introduce players to new loot, better platforming puzzles, and trip mine hazards, these new settlements are bringing new missions, continuing the obvious current focus on ground gameplay and introducing one of the biggest features to the game in years. But we'll talk about that soon. First, let's look at the other side of this new location content drop. The side that actually kind of caught me off guard. New outposts. You may be surprised to see that these new outposts are not the same as the old ones we've known in Stanton. They're also a bit different from the colonialism outposts we are expecting to see in Pyro. These derelict outposts are best described as ruins, in my opinion. And while this addition is one heck of an appreciated surprise, it's a bit weird lore-wise. Considering the popularity of the Stanton system, you would think ruins like these would have been stripped clean already. Anyways, it's surprising to see these small points of interest added to the game so soon when the first time we even discovered the concepts for these places was in January. Sometimes work doesn't show up quickly, sometimes it does. These ruins will only be on Microtech for now though, and will probably still be pretty basic. But the new variety in locale, the possibility of better loot distribution, and some interesting platforming could make these locations a nice ongoing addition to the game that continues to evolve as new features are added. And this brings us to what is truly the biggest feature of 3.17.2 and one of the major feature additions of the year: the Planetary Navigation Mesh. This new major piece of technology will begin a new change in the missions we take and the tasks we are assigned. You'll no longer be limited to interior locations when it comes to AI interactions, which should begin to yield some major changes over the course of the next year. But it's not going to be a straightforward addition, so let's talk about it. None of these new locations would be all that interesting without the Planetary Navigation Mesh. We've seen them added before with derelict ships, and while those offered some new content, it wasn't a departure from what we already know. This mesh will allow AI to finally roam planets outside of these predefined interior spaces. See, these meshes have already existed in the traditional game spaces in the game, like cities and interior locations, But this expands on the system greatly to include human NPCs outside and will extend further towards fauna at some point in the future. It'll benefit us in line with navigation links to ships, trains, ladders, and other traversable mediums to give AI seamless movement from ship to station to space to derelict ship and beyond. These links are a separate task that have been worked on at the company and have been showing up in recent monthly reports and are visible on the development progress tracker. They've even been shown off in engine a couple of times, but we'll have to wait and see when they come into the game. Back to these navigation meshes, they aren't particularly easy to create, which is part of why the system has taken so long to make. In fact, for this most basic restrictive form of the feature, it took 52 weeks of work, and that's just what we know of. Another possible reason this took so long is the planetary creation technology needed to reach a matured state before the team could really start linking AI into the system. This only happened in the last couple of years, something I talked about in a video last year, and it makes a bit of sense that they wouldn't have started building this system until the planet tech was further along. Creating a logical navigation system for complex AI on planets with so much going on in this much detail doesn't seem like an easy task, and thus, this first application will actually be limited to just these initial locations we've looked at in this video. On top of this, we know these meshes will not always be actively computed. The locations will be regularly scanned when players are nearby, and AI need to be rendered, allowing for the system to understand when and where an AI might need to move, so that it's not constantly using computing power when it doesn't need to. But there's more to these possibilities than just guards walking around outside. Another surprise addition with this new patch is AI reinforcements. And not just some derpy spawn closet AI that we've been seeing in the bunkers, these are NPCs that will be dropped in on dropships from orbit to oppose you. Something we've seen in trailers in this game and many other fictions, and a bit of a sci-fi trope to be honest. This will be a refreshing way to keep the battle going and a more diversified way to go up against some enemies. I'm hoping it will quickly be added to other locations like the Attack on Orison event or the bunkers we're already enjoying. This would finally give us a reason to use those rather useless stationary guns that were added last year. Besides these immediate benefits though, some of the other things we've seen will come from this technology finally working could be the traveling merchant we've heard about in monthly reports and roadmap updates. However, we still haven't seen this in the weekly shows, and I personally expect it in Pyro first. There's also fauna, as I previously mentioned, with the first three being the Stormwall of Crusader, the Crab of Pyro, and the Stalker of Microtech. Finally, there will also be AI companions, which can join your team and crew to help with missions, passenger transport objectives that require you to pick up and drop off NPCs, and the ability for AI to help load your ship at cargo decks. These are additions that have either been shown or discussed in the last year or two, but will likely come next year at the earliest. The most important and immediate benefits we will be seeing from this feature right now are the updated missions surrounding new locations that will hopefully allow for more diverse combat encounters, if it works. This navigation mesh is nothing new for video games, and not even for space games. Navigation meshes can actually be a sticking point for many games. Reportedly, Doom Eternal saw their map system basically broken up until right before the launch due to their own navigation mesh system. Star Citizen's own long, grueling process of rewriting the existing CryEngine to allow for custom tooling and work like procedural planetary meshes has been a sticking point in the community and the studio. And much like many of the other similar engine-related functions being worked on like Gen 12 and persistent entity streaming, this navigation mesh is only just starting to bear fruit. It's a sign that production is speeding up, but not necessarily one that it will continue. We're now in a phase of seeing whether the wait was worth it. And if you're interested in learning more about this game and said wait, consider subscribing to this channel. And you can check out my second YouTube channel, Space Tomato 2, where I host my podcast, gameplay videos, and other casual gaming content from different games. And if you want to see what this game has to offer, glitches and all, come join my streams weekly on this channel or over on Twitch at Space Tomato Gaming. I hope you learned something new in this video, and I'll catch you in the next.